Welcome to Loud and Clear, a program geared toward the younger generations. You can listen in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or find the plug to our YouTube channel on kgtcradio.com.
Hey, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Carlos.
And welcome to Loud and Clear. This week we're also joined by Garrett.
Yep.
Here. And we are continuing Pastor Carlos's testimony. There was so many just good things that were shared. I mean, obviously not good things in the sense of just the trials that you have went through, as you were younger, but things that it just goes to show what God has brought you through, and it's just powerful. And there were so many details that was just surprising to me, and I've known you for quite a while, and so it was just it's really good to hear all this. But if you have questions for us here, you can go ahead and email them to vcfrevivalyouth@gmail.com. You can put LC in the subject line, or you can text us at 509-402-3446 if you have any questions that you want us to try to get on the program. And I think we're just going to try to get right into it. I think that try to pick up where we left off. I think that we were kind of talking about just as you got here, you were getting into school. You had come to church here at VCF, and you kind of experienced the presence of God. I wanted to ask you to kind of start it off. Do you recall a specific time where you really encountered the presence of God here?
I mean, in the beginning, I probably don't have an exact moment, but I do. I mean, I can look back on moments, and I'm like, man, I really experienced God in that moment. Like I said, it was weird. Like once I felt the presence of God, I was always very sensitive to the presence of God. I was anytime there was a church service and God was moving, I didn't care what was going on in my life. God touched me.
Yeah.
And I always felt that, and I always felt that draw, and I did. I wanted to serve God. I really, really did. But you're a teenager, I didn't have that, I don't know. I think I just wanted to fit in more than anything.
Yeah.
From past trauma of not wanting to be, of not feeling unloved. I just was trying to overcompensate for that. And so, I wanted to serve God. I just didn't have, the ability to at the time. I just felt like it wasn't really an option for me. And so, but I do. There's many moments I can look back on my life, and I'm like, man, those moments saved my life.
Yeah.
Encountering God throughout these areas of my life in these different seasons and trials. I'm like, man, I needed those because they always brought me back.
Yeah.
I always knew, if I ever got into trouble, I always, as terrible as it sounds, but that's my thought process was, I always have God, right?
Yeah.
I can always fall back, which is ridiculous. But that's how a lot of people view God. He's a last minute.
A crutch or something.
Yeah, a crutch,
and
that's kind of how I saw him for the longest time, and I saw him through high school. And then, I really had issues. Like I said, drugs and alcohol weren't my issues. Pornography was my biggest issue. And that just led to issues. And again, I dated people, but I never went all the way.
Yeah.
I was just terrified.
Were you pretty well liked when you were I know that we as people, when we're a teenager, we don't think anybody truly likes us, but because of insecurities and stuff like that we carry, I feel but objectively, do you feel like you were well liked when you came to Tonasket school? Yeah.
I never had a problem fitting in. You could say, as cliche as it sounds, I was part of the, what do you call it? The popular kids.
Yeah.
But I also was the kid that I could go into any circle and make friends.
Yeah.
I didn't just stay with the popular kids. We had a group of, obviously there was some of us guys that were the popular kids in our grade, but I could bounce around, and I did. I hung out with a lot of different people. And I think a lot of that did probably stem from the fact that I didn't want anybody to feel left out.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to feel what I felt, even if I didn't know God or I wasn't actively serving God. That was just something in me that I'm like, I don't want people to feel this way.
Yeah.
And so I did. I hung out with a lot of different people, whether they were, nerds or whatever. I just hung out, I could make friends pretty easily. But I was well liked. I never had a hard time making friends in high school.
I remember you guys were pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Too. Me and my brother, and we've always had a good sense of humor, and I thank God for that. We, as traumatic as some of the stuff that we've been through, we use it for We laugh about it sometimes, but it's just like God's just been good, and going through high school was great. I obviously had some issues. I did, like I said, my first girlfriend, my first serious relationship lasted like a year, and like that unlocked like a can of worms, right? Because it was the first time I went all the way with a girl, and it was like it unleashed hell over my life. Like, that's when pornography really started becoming a big issue in my life. Like that, I looked back and I'm like, man, where was the moment? And it's like, man, that was the moment. Yeah. Like the moment that when we first went all the way, it was like it unleashed this in my life, like sexual bondage like never before. Like I dealt with it, but like it was extreme, Yeah. Like, I mean, our relationship ended mostly probably because like it wasn't God, but my like understanding of a relationship then was just purely based off sex. Like that's just what it was for me, right? And so obviously you can't have a relationship like that, right? But I mean, she ended up wanting to go. I mean, it was so funny because like even though we were sleeping together, like there was certain areas I would not compromise on. Like she's like, well, let's go parties and drink, and I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. Yeah. And she's like, well, I'm going to, and then I'm like, well, then we're breaking up because I'm not drinking, which is so weird. I look back and I'm like, man, that's so weird. Yeah, here funny. I am like in one area I'm like but in the other area I'm like no. Yeah. And like, but yeah, I just refuse. I refuse to compromise in that area. I was like, I'm not doing that. Like I refuse to do that. And so that was like the big thing was she wanted to do her own thing, and I wanted to serve God, but here I am struggling, right? Like here I am dealing with this, and then obviously this was just a big deal, and so we ended up breaking up anyways, and then I ended up, when I was 15, I ended up in the Okanagan County Juvenile Center, and I was in there for 47 days, and that was like my rock bottom. Yeah. That was like, I don't think you can get lower than that. And being in there was, man, I was terrified. I was so scared, and I remember just sitting there, and I'm like, man, like, God, if you can, again, I use God as a crutch, and I'm so thankful that God, even in the midst of that, knowing that I had my own agenda, still loved me enough to do what he did. Yeah. But I remember saying, like, God, like, if you get me out of this, not even get me out of this, but if you somehow can use this, like, if you can somehow, like, I'll give you my life. Like, I will give you my life. And but I was in there for 47 days, and I finally get out, and I was just, like, plagued by voices. And those voices lasted for a long time. I mean, I'd say about 8 years, just condemnation. Yeah. Guilt about what I had done, and just plagued my entire life. And I get out of juvie, and obviously I'm on probation and all this stuff, and I end up going into Timothy House, which I still think to this day I was the youngest.
I was gonna say, what age were you?
I think I was fresh 17. I just turned 17, I think. So okay. I was young, right? I mean, like, you're in here with a bunch of men. Yeah, yeah. I was in Timothy House with a bunch of full-grown men, but I went in and I did a year, and it was not easy. It was hard. I mean, I'm still a teenager, and I'm surrounded with a bunch of men that, like, deal with drugs, and I didn't deal with that. That wasn't my struggle, and so that was really hard. But I ended up completing my year, and I met Ashley, my wife, who, while I was in the program, her mom and her came to visit from the coast one day, and I remember we did small groups back then for church, and we were doing Foundations small group in Ruth's house, and I'd seen my wife. I'd seen her before prior to this, but I remember she, like, walked into Ruth's house, and me and one of the guys that were in Timothy House were sitting right next to each other, and I was Isaac. And I leaned over to Isaac, and I was like, Isaac, that's gonna be my wife one day. And he's like, no way. And I was like, just watch. And at that time, I didn't really mean it. I was just kind of joking. Like, I was like, that's gonna be my wife one day. And he's like, yeah, right. And I was like, well, we'll just see. And I didn't know, but then we ended up talking, and obviously, long story short, we ended up getting married. But I did my year, and I graduated TH, and not even a month later, I get married.
Yeah, so you were 18?
Yeah, I was fresh 18. Wow. So I became I graduated. Here I am, like, finally working my first big boy job, I guess, you know, like where I'd have to provide for myself. And then I get married, and she had our daughter prior, so I became a husband and a dad in the same day, and that was, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing.
Wow.
I mean, that was terrifying, you know, but we did it, and marriage was, you know, the first year of marriage was rough.
Yeah.
Just like any other.
Especially when you're 18.
Yeah, man, I like wanted to just live life, and you know, it was so weird because like I graduated TH and I was on fire for God, but there was still a part of me that was like, I still haven't really experienced life. That's kind of what I thought. Like I haven't experienced life, but like I know that me getting married was my saving grace.
Yeah.
Like I needed that accountability. I needed to be accountable and responsible for somebody else, and that kept me for a long time. You know, like I can't go do that. Like I'm married. You know, I have a kid, and obviously like just because of what I had went through, I'm like I couldn't ever give up my kid. I'm not gonna do anything to hurt my child. Yeah. And I'm like, man, if I go out and party and do this and this and this, what's that teaching my daughter? Yeah. You know, that I love other things above her, that I'm gonna put this above her. And so I just refused to, and that grounded me for a long time. And obviously we had our issues with marriage, and had to just kind of go back and deal with some of the things that I hadn't dealt with before, you know, which is like, you know, pornography was still an issue in my life at this point. Like, even though I was out and married, like you know, this was like just a plague in my life. And it just plagued me for a long time. And obviously I was still dealing with condemnation and guilt from what I had done that landed me in juvie. I was still dealing. I mean, I would wake up, plague, go to bed, plague. And that was my life. I was bombarded by voices. Could never get over. Took me a long time to get over what happened and forgive myself and move on and genuinely feel like God had forgiven me. Yeah. You know, and like I felt like that was just something that was lingering over my life. And so I was kind of like just in that still, just dealing with it. I dealt with that for probably about 7 years, 8 years, carried that into my marriage. And so that was tough. We had to deal with that together, and thank God for my wife, who's a godly woman and prayed for me and loved me and you know, never took my struggles personally, never took my issue with pornography, my you know, that battle, never took it personally. She knew it had nothing to do with her. And I thank the Lord for that. You know, she would just tell me over and over, Carlos, I know you don't choose to struggle with this. Yeah, that's powerful. I know that you didn't wake up. I know that before you were born, you weren't like, oh, I want to struggle with anger, and I want to struggle with pornography, and I want to like. She's just like, you know, she's a godly woman, and I thank the Lord for her, and so we battled through that together as a couple, you know, and obviously we had, you know, multiple kids since then, you know, and you know, we're going on 9 years of marriage, coming up in June, and God's just done a miraculous work. Yeah, you know, obviously we were youth pastors for 3.5 years, you know. Yeah. And God's just done a miraculous work. I mean, God has really transformed my life. He's changed the way I think. He's changed everything about me. You know, God is just, you know, I just sit back sometimes and I'm like, man, I'm a lucky guy because I shouldn't be where I am today. And I think, you know, I kind of carry that around, that mentality around that around of like, man, I shouldn't be here. Because I never want to forget what God's done in my life. Yeah. I never want to get to a point where I forget, like, man, I shouldn't be here, and I'm only here because of the grace of God. You know, I can only be the husband that I am today because of the grace of God. I can only be the father that I am to my four kids because of the grace of God. And you know, just I never thought my life would be where it is today. I just never did. You know, and you know, I've talked to people that know my story, and they're like, man, never would have imagined. Yeah. You know, never could have seen that from where you came from to where you are today. Like, it is miraculous. It's a miracle. Yeah. And I just think to myself, it really is, you know. And obviously, you know, we get married, start doing youth group, helping you guys out, you know, you and your wife out. And that was the start of ministry for us, you know, and then did that for years. And then we end up opening up OMAC campus, and we get asked to be the youth pastors down there, and obviously we said yes, and obviously that came with battles too, but we did it. You know, we did it for 3.5 years, and I thank the Lord for those years. You know, beautiful 3 years of doing that, and you know, I mean, I can't really go into every detail of everything, but But what I want to get across for my testimony is that it does not matter what you've gone through.
Yeah.
It does not matter how hard your life has been. You know, it doesn't matter what Satan tried to do. God can heal. He can restore. He can put you in places that you were never meant to be.
Yeah.
He can put you in situations that you may feel like you're unworthy of. But God can genuinely restore years, and God can bring people into your life that can show you the love of God and the kindness of God. And that's my story. My story really is that God was pursuing me even when I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, even when I didn't know him. I look back on those years of my childhood, as terrible as they were, and I know God was in all that. You know, he only let it go so far and no further. And I thank the Lord for that. I think that, you know, there was voices and insecurities that I had, and God is so sovereignly, so patiently, so lovingly dealt with those things. Yeah. You know, and so yeah, it's a beautiful story. Again, I just, you know, I look back on that and I'm like, man, I'm just grateful. I'm thankful that God never let me go, even when I was stubborn and didn't want anything to do with him, and now here I am.
It's powerful, and I was just thinking about as you're talking about that, like, I mean, I don't know, we could view just the battles that we have in life and the things, and we can get bitter with those things, and we can also like push people away, and we can, like, I think that some people think that, like, oh, you were brought out of that, but you probably still carry something, or like it's fragile, or like they I think that because they've seen people fall in the church, and unfortunately, you know, we've seen that to where people have fallen, and it makes church. I mean, it only takes one to give Christianity a bad name, and to give people an opinion, or one in their experience. They see somebody they trust, and then they fall away, or lead, or whatever. So they assume that everybody's walk is fragile.
Yes,
they
right.
assume that everybody's thing is fragile. And it's like, man, you can go through things, like traumatic things. Like, I mean, man, you went through some traumatic things, and you could be counseled for the rest of your life and need constant affirmation from people. Right. Or the presence of God can begin to undo things in your life. And, you know, it's not like, I mean, you might still battle and struggle, but like the Lord is your comfort.
Exactly.
And it's like you're all like the presence of, it only takes moments in the presence of God to know that you can be fully trusting of that. Exactly. And like Melanie and I have talked, it's not like we don't trust each other, but more than trusting each other, because we do, but more than trusting each other, it's the Lord in each other's lives that we trust. We know that, like, I know that she ultimately, when push comes to shove, and just in her daily, she's praying. Yeah. She's taking things to the Lord, you know, and God will speak to her about something. Or ultimately, I know she trusts me. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to seek the Lord. God's going to speak to me. And I know you have the same relationship with your wife. Yeah. You know, and Garrett, I know that you guys have that too, is like, you know that you're sensitive to, you want to be sensitive to what the Lord says. Yeah. So ultimately, like, you don't have to be like walking on glass with each other or walking on glass with people. It's like you can just trust God in your life and in people's life.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like your testimony, it's all about the goodness of God. Like that's what it is, right? It's before we truly understand who Jesus is. And for me, like, you know, you were touching on, you know, sometimes people think like, oh, you know, it's so traumatic, so it must be fragile, or it must be traumatic, so I can't talk about it, or you know, I can tell you, as God is my witness, that those things, and I said it off air, that I have to remind myself that I've gone through some of these things, and as I talk about it, it shocks me because I'm like, man, I forgot about that. Yeah, you know, and it's like, again, it's two separate lives. You know, God was so sovereignly, like, dealt with that, and the voices and the trauma that I could continue to carry for the rest of my life. God has dealt with that so sovereignly, so lovingly, that He has to remind me that I've gone through those things. And it doesn't bring up pain. It doesn't bring up, you know, I don't get like, you know, I don't look back on those and I end up like, it doesn't hurt me. I just know that like God had His hand, and I'm thankful for what I've gone through, because it's why I am today. It's what's made me into who I am. And you know, it's it's those scars that Paul talks about in Galatians chapter 6. We've all gone through some things.
Mm-hmm.
We've all experienced things. We all have a different testimony, but at the end of the day, it's my testimony is about the goodness of God and how good He's been to me. Like I said, He's done a sovereign work in my life.
Yeah.
With those things, and so I'm just grateful.
How beautiful is that too? That like the fact that you're just saying that, like it's like I forget sometimes. The fact that there's genuine people in this world that like they're on podcasts and on things, and it's like they wear their trauma on their sleeve.
Yeah.
It's like, and they can't get away from it, and they have to have all these things to cope with the things that they've been through, and it's just so prevalent on their mind, and it's like they don't trust anybody, and they're just like constantly living in that same thing over and over again, and that's their life. That's what they pride themselves in. That's their story. And then you have somebody who has peace about it. Not that they've forgotten it because it's traumatic and they can't talk about it, but they've forgotten it just because God's grace has covered it, just because God has restored them and changed them into somebody else. And it's like, unless I need to encourage somebody with a testimony in my life, like there's even things that the pastors that we have on Morning the Word have talked about in their life, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, say that again. Wait a second. I had no idea you went through that.
Yeah.
Like, because God has taken care of it, and God has been their comforter. But then they bring it up, and it's like, wow, that's powerful. Like, that even brings out more respect, or more like just encouragement of like, wow, God can just do that in somebody's life, and we don't have to carry these things. And it's like, man, the world around us wants to analyze every little thing that happens to us and be like, oh, this is why you are the way that you are. It's like, no, God can cover all of that in a moment.
Yeah.
In the presence of God, it's like, that's the reason why I can't imagine not taking time in a week to be in the presence of God, or in a day to be in the presence of God, to wash the things, that this world can, the things that can take a toll on you.
Yeah, the world tells you that you are the way you are because of the trauma that you went through. And yes, that's true to an extent, but I am who I am because of what God's made me to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my trauma does not define me. Jesus defines me.
Yeah.
And when the Bible talks about you and I being a new creation when we're saved, you are a new creation.
Yeah.
The Bible says, behold, the old things have passed away. All those things have passed away. My trauma doesn't get to dictate who I am today. What I went through doesn't get to dictate who I am today. It's not part of my identity. My identity is not what I went through. My identity is in Christ. My identity is secure. My identity is not changing. And I think, the world has it so twisted. I guess, I could blame my past for some of the things I've gone through, but I don't want to live my life that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to live my life,
It's letting life happen to you.
It's like just, take it to God. Let God deal with it, and He will.
Yeah.
If you can get anything from my testimony, is that God can do it.
Yeah.
He can do it. He can. He can. You might think it's impossible, but God can do it.
Yeah.
God can do anything. And if you'll just stay consistent, if you ask, seek, and knock, and don't give up and don't quit, God will make a way, even when it seems impossible.
Oh, and the self-motivation speeches that people give, it's like, don't let life happen to you.
Yeah.
You happen to life. No, don't let life happen to you. Let God happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And then He'll use and manipulate the things that life tries to do for you, for His glory and for the good. And it's just powerful.
Yeah, there's something Billy Graham said. He said everybody has, and I've said this before, everybody has a past, but we all have multiple futures.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can decide what your future is going to look like, and only you can decide that, hey, I'm going to allow God to use what I've gone through. Yeah. I'm going to allow, only you can decide, like, hey, I want healing in my life, and I'm going to give this to God and allow God to begin to heal some of the things in my life and deal with those. And I pray and hope that anybody that's dealing with things, that's listening to this, that you make that decision to get before God and say, God, I'm going to allow you to use my life. Yeah. I'm going to bring my trauma to you. I'm going to bring my pain to you. I'm going to bring what I've gone through, what others have done to me, or what I've done to myself. I'm going to bring these things to you and allow you to remake my story.
Yeah, that's powerful. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We are out of time. We will catch you next time on Loud and Clear.
Tune in to Loud and Clear every Thursday at 7 p.m. or listen online at kgtcradio.com.